because for me, I love what I do and I want to create that extra special thing for my couple. Like, so my couple looks at their gallery and it doesn't look like the same, 30 other weddings that I photographed at this. It's not a carbon copy. There's uniqueness to each, even if it's at the same room, right? It's the same
Mhm.
room, but maybe the posing is different. The lighting is different. The angle is different. Something's always different that the couple's like, wow, Leo did that photo just for us.
Welcome to The Right Fit. Today, we are joined by Leandro Da Silva, also known as Leo, a multi award winning wedding and portrait photographer whose work has been honored by Wedding and Portrait Photographers International, the Icon International Photography Awards, and the Fearless Photographers Association. Leo is a master of attending to the smallest details while capturing the grandest moments of life. Leo, you're always at these very high stakes, very creative photo shoots, let's call them, or events. Is this something that you have to switch on the day or during the event? Or is this just kind of like how you are when you wake up, even with your kids?
Yeah, I think I'm like that all the time. Like, love the pressure. I love the stay busy. My mind is always going. So, like a lot of times people are like, "Oh, do you relax?" And my relax is sometimes a little different than a lot of people. Like, I'm not one to like sit around and watch TV or anything like that. I'm always out and about. I'm not a homebody as much as sometimes I would want to be, but it's like it's just me. It's my DNA. I like to be out and about. And when I'm shooting weddings, it's high pressure sometimes, and it's dealing with multiple personality timeline. Things sometimes are not running the way we plan, but we try to make the best out of it, and we do. We get what we need to do.
Yeah, no, I mean that sometimes people don't know that or don't see that because they're not in it, but you definitely have to be very versatile and dynamic in what you do. I think one thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I don't know exactly what you would call your photography style, and you can let us know if there's a name for it or not. But I do know that lighting and certain aspects of what you do is very important. And so you have almost like this trademark, let's call it technique or style. But are there like different like landscapes or, now that people are going for sometimes the outside of the box venue that have forced you to kind of change your style a little bit or be a little bit more creative in certain areas?
Yeah, so I don't have your typical kind of way that I got into the photography or wedding industry. It was kind of almost it was like a passion, or even not even a passion, because I wasn't passionate about photography. I was passionate about art, and that's kind of like been my thing since very small. Like, I wasn't the greatest student, but I was always passionate about art. I started taking art classes very young, and I learned traditional art, Renaissance paintings, like the masters. And so that kind of always had in my mind, that was always there. And then once I got to college, it was like, you got to major in something. And I'm like, what am I good at? And I was like, what? I can major in art. That's amazing. And I took that approach, and it's really the first time I really picked up a camera was in college photography, black and white photography class, film photography class. And I didn't like love it. I was just kind of curious, like what it was. What is it about, and what's the whole process? And I really fell in love with it. And I didn't fall in love with taking the pictures, but I fell in love with the process of developing it or getting the photos, right? The in between. And that's where kind of like I loved. And then I started understanding, what I can do with that art form. Because I wasn't photographing people. I was really trying to create something abstract, or I was looking at light. That's basically the fundamental of photography. I was looking at light, and that's where kind of like I was messing around with it, and I had it on the side, and I kind of continued with my photography, my art, and I was concentrating in graphic design, and then it was just kind of I got one thing led to another. I bought a what was it, a Canon D40 digital camera. So then I try to do what I was doing with the film photography with the digital, and then the rest is kind of history with what I did with the digital camera. You get a digital camera, and then everybody asks you to do things like, hey, can you take pictures of my baby? Can you take pictures of me? And then your weekends start filling up, and like, oh my god, I'm busy doing pictures for others. And then I'm like, what? Let me, people start asking, how much does this cost? How much does that cost? And, I go and all right, I'll charge you $50.
Yeah, making stuff up.
yeah, and I kind of I learned on my own, and then once I really when it got serious was when I photographed my first wedding, right? It was this is kind of typical, I think, in a lot of wedding photographers. Like you're asked by someone you know, you've never photographed a wedding. I didn't even know what a wedding photography was all about, and then it's like less than a month I think before the wedding, and they asked me, "Hey, would you photograph my wedding? I like how you photograph those babies and all those other stuff." And I'm like, "Really? You want me to photograph a wedding? Your wedding?" I'm like, "Sure." No contract talk, no price talk. It was just like, "All right, let me know what time it is. I'll show up with my camera and I'll take your pictures." And that's what I did. I basically showed up and I just really documented what I saw. And actually, I'm going to backtrack. Actually, I went online and I typed in wedding photography, like I think the day before. And what I came across was fearless photographers. So I don't know if you're familiar with fearless photographers. So it was fearless photography was like a unique. It was something different. It was it was something that looked like art. And I'm like, wow, I like this. I can resonate with this. This is what I know. And I'm like, okay, this is what it is. I'm looking at the light. I'm looking at all these people moving around and just capturing moments. And that's what I did. Like I didn't have your traditional like getting ready and ceremony. It was just kind of like I followed the flow of the day. It was like an outdoor barn kind of tent wedding. Delivered it. The couple was happy. Like they handed me a check at the end of the night. They're like, "Hey, here's a check. And is this good?" And I look at the check and I'm like, "It's $500." I'm like, "Wow, this is great." You know, Take it. And then when I got home, I downloaded the photos and I started editing. And I really like fell in love with it was like almost all the process again that I had loved with the film photography. And I got so excited that then it's crazy because I guess when you're that new and fresh, you're like Fearless Photography had a competition where you could submit photos and you become you win a Fearless award. And I'm like, you know what? I got a couple photos here. I think you're good. And I submitted and crazy. I won a Fearless award on my first time I actually submitted. And I'm like,
As a
holy,
rookie?
as a rookie, as the first wedding I've ever photographed. And I'm like, oh man, like this is serious. Like I can actually do this. Like so that kind of really gave me the confidence to be like, okay, you can do this. And then my next thing is like, all right, how can I get better? Because that's always been my inner challenge with myself. I always want to get better. I don't want to be the best, like in terms of like I don't like comparing myself to others, but I like to be better than who I was or who I am, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna try to photograph my next wedding. I'm gonna try to book another wedding using this wedding, and I'm gonna try to do better, right? And then in the meantime, how can I get better? And is there classes? Can I call up other photographers and see if I can shadow them? And that's where I kind of hit a wall where I reached out to a bunch of photographers, and this is 15, 16 years ago. And I got like kind of stonewalled. Like a lot of times they wouldn't even reply, or they would pick up and they were like, "Oh no, I don't need any help." Or, it was kind of like I was hitting a wall, and I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to do this on my own. So I went on, Fearless. They were running like a workshop like in Arizona. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to Arizona for like 2, 3 days. And I went and it was like an inspiring event that they had. I learned a lot. I networked and then I just got obsessed with just taking classes and workshops and just trying to get better and kind of it became like a snowball effect. It just kind of got bigger. I got my second wedding and the same thing, like couples like, how much is it going to be? And I'm like, well, I got 500 for this wedding. Maybe I could get 600 for this one. And I'm like, and then I'm like, all right, it's $600. And I think at that point, I didn't have a contract at that point because it's still fairly new. And then I'm like, okay, I got to get serious with this business. Something that I did really early, and I think it helped being around these people who already had established businesses and just kind of really wanting to do better. I set up a LLC. I made it legit. I got a contract, like one of those online contracts.
Yeah.
From that wedding, I got another wedding and it just kind of snowballed. So, and it got to a point where like, okay, I'm like, all right, I could probably do this. This is kind of like a side hustle, right? But then it gets to a point that side hustle becomes, like a full-time job. So now you have two full-time jobs and sometimes you're even putting in more work on your hustle or your second job. And that's where kind of then you got to make decisions like, do I stick to one or do I do both? Or do I kind of put all my focus on one thing and really try to make this something special.
What was the
And
other thing that you were doing at the time?
so I was doing a lot. Right out of college, I was freelancing for a pharmaceutical company. I was doing like pharmaceutical design, and then at the same time, I got an opportunity to teach at our visual and performing school in Newark. And at that point, it was like I had no background in teaching. I had no background in education. I didn't take any education classes. It kind of, I guess, I'm not things don't just fall on people's laps. I think you create your opportunities. I think everything that you do leads to something. And I'm a firm believer is never burn bridges, always be nice to people, always be respectful. And I don't know how it was like one of my high school teachers, my math teacher reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And we just kind of started talking. I said, "Look, I just graduated college." And he's like, "Oh my God, what was your major?" I'm like, "Well, fine art, graphic design." And he's like, "Well, I'm looking actually for a graphic design person to create a program at the school. Like we want to create a graphic design program. Would you be interested in a position like this or coming by and just talking to me?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll come by." And I came by and he kind of presented the whole thing to me. And it was, I didn't say yes right away. So I went back to like one of my college professors and I kind of put it all out there. I'm like, "Look, I got this job opportunity. I'm working at a pharmaceutical design firm that's, that I'm get paid well. It's great. I like it. Just the hours are kind of weird."
Mm.
And then she's like, "Why don't you do both? You can do both." And I'm like, "You're right. I could do both."
Wow.
So I was doing both for a while, and then I left the pharmaceutical design and just started. I got the job teaching, and it was hard because I didn't go into teaching, but I almost fell in love with the whole teaching where like I can teach like a student something and see them get excited about it and the work that they're producing. So that was very satisfying where you see, someone a student that didn't know anything or had no interest in something create and having a passion and then, producing work and so forth. So then that's when kind of like, I think my third or second year of teaching, that's when kind of like the photography came back and I actually started opening up the business and doing both at the same time. And it's a lot of things that people don't see, like the late hours, the grind, coming from a wedding, and
Uh,
home like maybe 1 in the morning, having still back up your cards, going to sleep at 2:30 in the morning, getting up at 6 and doing the whole thing over and over again. And it's hard, but at the end of the day, like people always ask me, like, "Do you love it?" I'm like, yes, I love both. For me, like going out shooting a wedding's not work. Going out and doing a session's not work
mm.
because, not to sound corny or cliche, but I love
Yeah.
what I do, right? I love what I
Yeah.
do. It doesn't feel like work for me. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna shoot a wedding.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people, like really find, what you love. Like don't go get into photography because you can make money because it's not one of those things where you can make believe me, you can make a lot more money doing something else, but find that passion. And luckily for me, like I said, I don't believe in luck all the time. I think you just gotta create your opportunities and I'm really big on like networking and like I said, always keeping contact with people. Sometimes like us, right? We went to school together and then years later, like I remember I think the last time like I saw you in school and what was this, like third grade, fourth grade? I forget. Like,
Probably. I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, and then all of a sudden, like I think I saw you in a soccer game or something, and then
Yeah.
years later I see you, you're opening up a business, you're
Changed schools. I'm trying to think why there was such a big gap. Did you always go to Wilson?
so I went to Wilson and then high school I went to East Side.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think you moved, right?
I moved during the high school years. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the
So
high
that's what
school
was the
years. I
gap.
think that's where it was, 8th grade or something that then we moved. And I think in high school we met because you were playing soccer as well. And I think that's where we kind of saw each other again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, things just kind of work out. And then you're working in the same industry as someone.
Not planned for anybody watching or listening. This was definitely just a luck of the ways of us ended up. I mean, I'm a DJ, I'm not a photographer, but still being in the same industry. There's been times where we cross paths. I think the last time it's been a little too long,
Been a while.
but it's been a little too long. But we have crossed paths, and we are essentially serving very similar market and doing weddings, and it's kind of weird in a good way, when you kind of align with somebody like that. And but it's also once again a testament that I always remind people who are watching or listening to this. It's like, I've been bringing up the whole like linear thing, like where when we're younger, we think that our life is going to be in this straight path, and that sometimes a lot of time, actually not a lot, it never is. It's going to
No.
be wiggles and coming in and coming out. But I feel like the people who you're meant to either align with or connect with or whatever, whether it's a year or 10 years, it will happen one way or another for whatever it is. I mean, it could be romantic, it could be friendship, it could be colleagues, but it's just weird somehow how it works. When I first started, even in my industry, for context for viewers and listeners, help with some headshots and some pictures that I still
That's right.
remember at like a rundown park uh, lot or whatever.
The stadium.
State, yeah. And that, sometimes even looking back at that time, starting a business with so much unknown, you're kind of like, I gotta do these things to be official, but I still don't really know what I'm doing here. And look, 20 years later of DJing or whatever, like I'm still sometimes figuring things out.
Oh,
Or like you mentioned, trying to get better, trying to improve, or like you said, you got a contract. I'm sure your contract has changed a few times
oh,
since that.
yeah,
Since
yeah.
that, you know,
Almost like every year or so, you kind of
yeah,
review it and see things that, yeah, all right, maybe I had to add this clause because this
something happened.
situation. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You always, at the end of the day, you gotta. It's serious now. It's like we deal with important time in people's lives, so it's not. You can't just. It's not by chance. We can't just chance everything.
No. And that investment factor, I think, changes the game too, right? So we're trying to deliver this high, maybe let's call it high touch, let's call it, premium. Sometimes people like to use the word luxury, whatever your term is. The case is people are entrusting you with a very, very valuable part of their day. Photography is at the top. I'm not being self-serving. A lot of times, sometimes entertainment somewhere in the top three. Like we're talking top things. So you make an agreement, people want you to deliver on that agreement, and they're going to hold you to it. But just as much as we want to hold ourselves to that standard, and even more than that, I'm more of a under promise, over deliver type of person. I'm sure you are as well, from the sounds of like the whole I'm trying to improve and get better every time. And I think that's important for people to know, who are either looking for a service like yours, Leo, or somebody in the industry who's trying to build theirs, and just going from a starter perspective and being like, yo, I want to be just like Leo. And it's like, well, I'm not saying you can't be, but like, there's a little legwork, there's a little foundation that you got to put in, a little time and effort. I mean, luckily we live in a time of technology where I do believe that can happen way faster than when we started. Like you're lucky that you found that online contract, but like that was kind of barely like YouTube University for me when I started DJing wasn't as much of a thing as now. Now you could go on YouTube and learn how to DJ within a month, and I'm not knocking it. I think it's great, whatever. But there was also a different learning curve at that time. And I
No, go
mean,
ahead.
no, it just made me think about, what we're talking about right now. And kind of, I wanted to touch on, I mean, and if you needed to add anything that if it's not related, but like a mentoring program, you're launching one, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true, or
So
thinking about it?
yeah. So the last couple of years, I've thought about it, like, I was like, "Oh, I wanna do something." It's always like that getting it's interesting 'cause I'm always taking pictures of people. I'm always on the other side of the camera, and I don't feel like I'm a shy person, but it's, like, hard to be in front of the camera. So, like, looking at yourself and being able to talk, and me having the experience of being in front of a classroom, right, and teaching, and that I think that's where kind of, like, I like the teaching, and I did it for 12 years. And it was something that it was natural to me because growing up, like my teachers that I had, it wasn't like I was trying to replicate what other teachers did. I was just trying to be myself and trying to connect, right? And I think that's a lot of things that we do all the time, as in at least in my photography industry, is we're trying to connect with people, right?
Yeah.
So my me taking all these workshops and classes and stuff, I think there's some value. I'm not saying I'm the best, like I said, but I do have some valuable knowledge that I can share with people. And I'm one of those that I'm not secretive, right? Like I'm not, I'll help you out. You reach out, you drop me a DM. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna reply back to you. I'm gonna take my time. I'll send you some stuff. Like I'm not gonna, hey, by the way, I'm not gonna give you, I don't ignore you. So I'm really active in that way. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, I don't want to, or will you be able to share?" And actually, I was having this conversation. I had a workshop I did a workshop on Tuesday, I'm sorry. And one of the things was we were talking about like sharing and showing people how I do things. And someone asked something like, "How long have you been doing workshops, or how long have you been sharing?" And I said, "Well, I actually started showing people on my Instagram how I create these photos that I create." And
Wow.
it's funny that you asked, because when I started doing this, I had photographers reach out to me and tell me, why am I doing that? Because I shouldn't show people how I create these images, because it's secretive, or it's valuable to me. And I stopped and I thought about it. I'm like, no, today's day and age, anybody could go on Google and find stuff and learn how to do something. So what I'm
Mm,
just doing is showing the process of how I do it. Just because I show you how to do it doesn't mean you're going to do exactly the same way I do it, right?
mm,
So it's always been something that I've loved to do. And it's always like, next year, I'm like, all right, next year I'm going to do a workshop, or next year I'm going to do the mentoring program. And then next year comes and you don't do it. So like this year was like my goal, that like 2026, I'm gonna go all in, right? I'm gonna, put myself out there. I'm not creating a platform, but I'm creating an avenue where I'm putting myself out there to speak, or to do workshops like the one I did on Tuesday.
yeah.
I got a couple things I'm working on in terms of creating these seminars or workshops or talks, and even like one-on-one. I've done stuff where like one-on-one I kind of coach a couple people on like how to create certain photos, or people will, like I said, will DM me and ask me, "Oh, how can I create this?" And I give them feedback. I'll be like, "Look, this is how I would approach this. This is how I would do it." And I don't charge them for that, right? But then that's where it got me thinking, like, look, I can actually be valuable to people. And again, I'm not doing it because I can make money, because there is a lot of people that go into education because they feel like, oh, there's money to be made.
Right, right, right.
I just look at it as like, look, I'm able to help the community, because that's what I'm about. I'm really big on community, because it's helped me, right? Where I am today, because of I did everything on my own. I have
Mm,
to give thanks to everyone that's been open to me, that's been mentors to me, that did similar things to me. Of course, I've paid to go to workshops, and I've spent lots of money going
yeah.
into workshops, thousands of dollars. But there's also been opportunities, people that I do go to their workshop, but they've helped me when I DM'd them and asked them for information, and I asked them, for feedback. And I think if everyone does that, like as a community, because I look back, because really I look back to when I started, when I reached out to those photographers, and they didn't help me. They didn't like kind of give me a hand. They were just kind of like, "Well, you're just someone coming into the industry, because you're gonna take my weddings, you're gonna take my
Yeah.
clients." And I think that scarcity mindset is the wrong mindset to have,
Mm,
because at the end of the day, there's, I think, enough to go around for
right.
everybody. Again, the type of client I want might not be the client you want, and not every client is my client. And
Absolutely.
I think if we all, as a wedding industry, or I'm talking about everyone, because at the end of the day, it's a wedding is a collaboration of multiple vendors that come together to make this event happen for this couple, right? If we all are able to share and grow and be like, all right, this is not my client, but maybe you should hire this person, or hey, you should check out this person, because I think they would be a better fit for what you're looking for, instead of like, yeah, I'm just gonna yes a client, and just so I could get that booking, because I
Yeah.
need that booking. And I understand people that do that. You got to put food on the table, you got to put the roof over the head. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of, at least photographers that in my industry, that have, that I find out they have a lot of issues with couples and stuff. It's because they did something that they couldn't do, or something that they didn't want to do, and they just yes the couple, and then there was some bad ending for a lot of that. So
Yeah.
I think I want to teach now. I think I'm ready. I'm doing stuff. I got a new website that's going to be launched. It was actually supposed to be relaunched already, because that's one thing. My website is like 8 years old. Haven't really touched it. Thank God. Like, I've been able to have a successful business without having to have a really good website, because again, I'm referrals. I get a lot of stuff from Instagram and just passive referrals. And that's why I tell people, like, really go above and beyond for your clients, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the best referral that you'll have. Better than Google, better
Yeah.
than any social media platform, because they'll vouch for you. They'll be like, no, you got to hire Leo. Leo is
Yeah.
amazing. He went above and beyond, like you said. He did this for me. He did that for me. And I really do. That's my goal. I go above and beyond for my couples, and I'll do extra things without telling them, hey, look, I'm doing this extra. I'm just doing it because I feel like that's what they need.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. You hit on like so many points. I think for starters, the whole community aspect of wanting and being open to giving back. I think that's something that is very needed for somebody starting out. It could be very scary to know where to even start. So the fact that a veteran in the game would be open to just give a helping hand, even if it's a big tip or a small tip, let's call it, through a DM, whatever the case may be. And also the sense of, let's call it, some maturity in the game, where people, I feel like, sometimes look at it as this competitive nature where, like you said, somebody's going to try to steal my booking or this and that. I've had DJs DM me about random stuff like, how did you put it? Sometimes it's not even music related. How did you put this logo on this thing to make your thing look cool? And sometimes I did it for them because I was like, hey, here's to do it. And then I give them an explanation, but I also did it for them so they could feel like, oh man, like this is cool. Like, and whatever. I think it's more of saying, we're building more than something. It's just more than just about us, when you look at community. And I'm a firm believer of like, when you look at things in that fashion, you're going to grow differently and it will be reciprocated differently. And to note on photographers, there's different types. I've seen photographers in the comment section trashing other photographers with like the lighting or the way that their flash was pointed and like all these things. And I'm kind of like, in my mind, I'm not a photographer, but what I do know is there's so many different ways to do what you guys do. And there's so many different styles. And maybe that flash was pointed directly at this person's face for a reason, because there's some type of thing that
Yeah.
they do. And that's just their thing. But I think also knowing that there's not necessarily 100% right or wrong. I talked to a photographer who was very candid in saying like he didn't know what ISO and like all these terms, and I feel like that could be scary for some. I'm not saying that you shouldn't start to familiarize yourself with something, but like, it could be a lot. We were like aperture, ISO, you hear all these terms, you're just like, oh, it's you learn, you figure it out,
Right.
you'll adjust, you'll figure it out as you go. But having that openness to help people, I think, is amazing. And I'm pretty confident that your program would be successful because you've already had that heart and that mindset, with it not being really a thing or being for the money. But I am a firm believer that does get to a point where, especially as you mature and grow in something, it's always good to give back in some capacity. I'm not saying everybody has the time or the resource to do it, but I think it's great that you're doing it. But I think something that is a question for me to you is, do you feel, and I don't know if you've ever had this in the DMs, right? Because I know you haven't really had the structured way of doing it yet. That is it easier to help a newbie or somebody seasoned, right? Because you might get both people who might want to be part of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
mentorship.
Yeah, so 100% I think is a newbie's much easier in a sense where they come to you with like open-minded, I think, more a little bit more open-minded, because they really don't know, they don't have like really bad habits, they haven't done something long enough. Because I've had not so many veterans, because I think a lot of, especially in the photography industry, a lot of these older, or older meaning in the industry,
Yeah.
veterans, there's an ego there, right? Every industry has those few that there's an ego, and they don't want to ask for help, right? Or they'll ask for help in a certain way where they'll like structure the question in a way where like they're getting information, but they're like, hey, can you help me?
Yeah. 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 They won't put it
And
up. Yeah.
and that's the hardest part with people who've been in the industry more, and because they need the help. They want the help, but they don't wanna show other people that they need help, or they don't wanna, like, make it seem like, their clientele or their clients to be like, "Oh, man, he's asking this guy for help." Because one thing I mentioned to, the attendants at the workshop on Tuesday, I'm like, "Look, at the end of the day, you're learning something from me today, hopefully, but I can learn from you." Just because you've
Mm,
been photographing for a year or 2, I'm a firm believer that just doesn't mean like I can't learn anything from you, right? Because,
uh,
you know, in the photography industry, there's so many talented photographers that have been photographing for a year or 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Because I've always felt, this is from the beginning, that you can always learn something from someone. It doesn't matter, like for example, I can learn so much from you being, in the entertainment sector of the industry, right? And I can learn something from videographer. I can learn something from a planner. So all, and that's what I mean about community. Like if we can all be able to share, and I try to look for groups, or try to meet up like with people that are like minded, that want to improve.
yeah.
And, I welcome people to reach out to me like, "Hey, Leo, can you help?" I'm not going to put another thing, I'm not going to go and put you on blast on like, "Hey, this person inquired with me. They didn't know how to do this. They didn't know what ISO was. They've been
Yeah.
photographing for 5 years."
Right.
And it's one of those things where if someone's willing to hire you and you don't know what ISO is, good for you that you're able somebody's able to be confident enough to hire you because of your skill, what you showed them or what you said to them. At the end of the day, there's a fine line before, when people say like fake it till you make it, right? Like just fake it till you make it. I think fake it till you make it is great until you can screw up someone's important, wedding, right? Like,
Right. Right.
and that's where it kind of there's a fine line where kind of like, hey, I don't have no problem faking till you make it, but don't use someone else's images to say that these are my images, right? Don't show clients. I've heard stuff, we've heard all that stuff, like people saying, hey, see my work, and then they show it's nothing like that.
Yeah. People
So
stealing photos from other people's websites. That's happened to
yeah,
my
yeah.
company. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
unfortunately something that happens regularly. So I always tell, if people ask me, like couples ask me, like, hey, anything that I should know, or anything that any valuable information you give me, and I'm like, make sure whoever you hire, and I say this for all the vendors, that they have experience in this type of environment, or this. It doesn't even have to be a venue. Like I don't believe that you have to photograph at a venue or work at a venue to work at that venue. I
Right.
feel
Right.
like
Right.
if you've worked at a venue that holds that many people, or it's a similar venue, you're good, right?
Correct.
As a photographer, there's many venues that I haven't worked at, but just because haven't worked at it doesn't mean, I'm gonna be better or not as good as someone else. Like I find it like as a photographer, venues that I work at a lot becomes even more challenging for me, especially for me because I want to create something that's different
Yeah.
for each couple, right? Because for me, I love what I do and I want to create that extra special thing for my couple. Like, so my couple looks at their gallery and it doesn't look like the same, 30 other weddings that I photographed at this. It's not a carbon copy. There's uniqueness to each, even if it's at the same room, right? It's the same
Hmm.
room, but, maybe the posing is different. The lighting is different. The angle is different. Something's always different that the couple's like, wow, Leo did that photo just for us. So that's kind of a long answer to your question.
No.
I think the easier person, it would be the newbie, because
Hmm.
I think they take in everything. When a veteran, let's call him a veteran, there's a lot of resistance, a lot of resistance to change, because change is not easy. I
Mm.
understand that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're looking for help, then you got to be open to that help. You got to be able to be honest with yourself, right? Because a lot of times you hear especially, I know in the photography industry and videography industry, the last year and this year, a lot of photo video people are not doing as well.
Mm.
And I think if you're not doing as well, you can't just blame the industry, right?
Mm.
You got to look internally, like, okay, what am I doing that might not be right? Am I trying to get better? Am I responding to my couples in a timely fashion? What am I saying to the couples?
Right.
And then you also got to think, am I charging something that's the work doesn't correlate with the value? The value I'm charging does not correlate with what they can get. And so there's a lot of factors. And I think it's just, we got to be honest with ourselves, right? We can't just blame others.
Mm. Yeah, you got to take responsibility. And I think one of the biggest things that you just said at the end, and I do want to touch for something on the beginning, is the resistance to change, adaptability, and all these things. I have personally, within the past year or so, been to events where other vendors are complaining about whatever, so it's already starting with they barely want to be there, right? So we're already off to a bad start. If you're giving the energy to like that you don't even really want to be at a place, how is that going to expand to this client experience that's going to maybe want to refer you and get you more clients? We're already kind of not showing a good sign. On the back end of things, I understand that as business owners, We sometimes take on a lot, or we take on things that are just not in our wheelhouse, let's call it. But sometimes it's a necessary evil. You mentioned that you get a lot of inquiries from referrals, but also from Instagram. I still run into industry professionals that are just like, I hate Instagram. Okay, you might feel this way, and I'm not telling you, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you need to love Instagram. But if a lot of people are looking on your Instagram versus your very expensive website, maybe you should give a little love to Instagram, or maybe hire somebody who can help you provide that, thing to your Instagram. But then now we're going to these things and they're like, oh, I'm not getting any leads and then nobody's reaching out. Well, where are you meeting these people? If people are on Instagram, but you're on, I don't know, somewhere else at a bridal show, I don't know, wherever you might be, I don't know, maybe you're not aligned with these clients that you're trying to meet because they're somewhere else. So meet your clients where you want to be. Also, the
Exactly.
generations are changing. The couples are
Exactly.
getting younger. I talk to most of my couples just to kind of get a range of where they're at age wise. I say 27 is like a magic number. Let's
Yeah.
plus or minus that a little bit, but let's add 27, right? At one point, Leo, you were 27 and now you're no longer 27. You're past that age and things have changed. So now, how are these people communicating? What is their preferred method? What is this long email that you're sending that they don't want to read? Maybe you need to shorten it up and switch it up and be more, relatable or connect in a certain way. I'm not saying change who you are, but you have to adapt. Things have changed, and people fight the change. And I always give the analogy when people, didn't want to use a car because they were using a horse, but it also becomes like a thing where it's like, yo, like stop fighting the thing. When you
Yeah.
worked in a school, I don't know if you saw it. I know I saw it. I also have a background for any listener or viewer that doesn't know. I used to work in the school system for a long time. I started at a point where there was the old school teachers who didn't want to use email.
Yeah.
What world are we in now that we cannot go without using email? We have to.
Yeah.
You just have to. They were at the point where they were just like, no, I don't want to use email. I don't want to use a computer. They were just fighting the technology. I'm just going to use this chalkboard and this thing. Sometimes you just have to adapt or you will be left behind and maybe you
100%.
won't be happy about it, but that's not a industry problem. That potentially is a you problem. So something to note that I think is very important. Going back what you were saying about the community and what you're doing and the building, I think it's also important to note for anybody watching or listening that you can learn from somebody who is younger. I have literally about a year or two ago collaborated with a DJ who is, let's call it 10 years my junior, but I learned a lot from this person. And this person learned some stuff from me too. But it's like, I didn't go in there saying, well, I've been doing this for longer. But sometimes I hear that too. Well, I've been doing this for X amount of years, and the chest comes out and you just kind of see this thing. And I'm like, what does it matter how
Yeah.
long you've been doing this thing? I could probably meet somebody who's been DJing for 2 years who might be better than me. Who cares if I've been doing it for 20 years? So I'm not saying it doesn't add something to what you do. I think experience matters. I think being able to problem solve and overcome issues sometimes does come with that time and experience. But also don't knock the people who are earlier in the game and what value that they can provide. So, I mean, you hit a lot of other things, but I just wanted to touch on those two main things. 'Cause I think they're important takeaways for that. But I guess with that said, I'm going to be honest, Leo, I did not understand your photography for a long time, right? And I feel like that's okay, right? Because as I matured as a creative and as a professional, I realized you don't need to understand everybody's art, and not everybody's going to be for you, and
Right.
everybody's your person. And you said that earlier in the conversation, which I think is great. But what is something that you feel like is maybe an obstacle or an objection that you have to overcome when meeting or talking to clients who are trying to figure out, like, I like this thing but I don't understand this thing. I don't know if that makes any sense, right? You could look at it and be like, wow, this looks like a portrait, like a something that I would hang,
Yeah.
old school painting kind of thing.
Yeah.
How does somebody know that that's for them or not if they're like on the fence?
Yeah, so I started like this is maybe a couple of years ago. I started positioning myself where like I made the choice. Like, look, I don't want every couple, right? I
Yeah.
want couples who like this to book me. So something I looked at, and then I sent it to a friend, and I'm like, yeah, he's like, oh, I'm looking at your feed, and you don't show anything else except this type of style. Like this is all you show, and I'm like, exactly, that's what I want because what was happening is I was utilizing Instagram as a leverage to get in front of all these other people because this is what I told them. I'm like, go to this venue's hashtag, right? Go through their feed, pick out all the photos that you think are mine. And he went through it. He's like, holy shit. Like your photos just stick out in them because everything else is vanilla. He's like, everything else blends in. The photos are the ones that are standing out. And I'm like, exactly. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to stand out from everybody else. I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to go this direction because it's much easier going this direction than I rather, charge a little bit more and like the whole, would you rather do have 10 weddings at 5,000 or 5 weddings at 10,000, right? You kind of look
Yeah.
at it and
Right.
I'm like, look, I don't want to do volume. I want to give everybody the experience that they need, that they want and that they need. And I want to produce great work. All that other stuff is great. It's beautiful work, but I want to go this way. I made that
Yeah.
decision a while ago because it gets to a point where like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Like, for the business and I'm like, this is what I want to do. Yes, I could do all that other stuff. And I do. And I got to a point where like years ago when like I wouldn't only show like the highlights or only stuff that I was on Facebook or on Instagram and couples were like, oh, do you do those traditional family photos? And I said, of course what, I'm gonna shoot the whole wedding and not do the portraits.
It's all gonna be this one thing. Yeah, yeah.
But the portrait's not what gets me booked, What gets me
Yeah.
booked, what can I do different? And I
Yeah.
think that's where, like, a lot of these in the wedding industry, the vendors that they don't like some people still don't realize that, what do you do different? What does
Yeah.
Christian do different than every other entertainment company out there, DJ out there, right? So things that you do different that people are attracted to the experience that you provide on that dance floor. And I look at the same thing. What is it that I do that, people can do it, but a lot of people don't want to do it because one, it takes a lot more work to edit these photos. A lot of people don't want to put in the work. You
Yeah.
and it's honest because I got people that tell me like, "Oh, Leo, you're crazy. You spend how much time on each photo?" I just, some people like, I just run it through AI. Let AI do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, fortunately, AI still hasn't gotten to the point where it can do what I can do,
Yeah.
in that sense, because there is still tried also because I'm not against AI. I think AI has a place in,
Right.
in,
Right.
in society. And like you said, you don't want to fight something and then be left behind. So I know how it works. I know what its capability and things are just going to get better. And hopefully one day it does, it's able to do what I can do, but then I'll be at the point where I'm already doing something different that I'm always involving, right? Like I don't want to be stagnant where then it's like, oh shoot, like I'm left behind. And then
Yeah.
as long as I could feel the passion and the hunger for it, I'm gonna do it. And I'm okay with people looking at my work. Oh, not for me, right? That's cool. I want you to book who you want because I've had not recently, but years ago, or even not years ago, like 3 years ago, I had a meeting with a consultation on Zoom, and this bride and groom were on the call, and she goes and starts showing me photos of this photographer, a different type of photography, more light and airy, kind of
I see that a lot.
mystical, like. And I'm like, beautiful photos. And she's like, oh, can you edit like this? And I'm like, I can edit like this, but I don't, and I was honest with her. I'm like, I don't want you to book me to do this. And I hadn't had this conversation with anybody. And I'm like, this is what I do. This is what I'm known for. I can do that for you, but I don't want to just photograph your wedding and change my style for your wedding just to book your wedding. And I told her straight up, I'm like, you should contact this person or these people, because it was like one or two photographers. I'm like, you should contact them and see if they're available for your wedding. And I'm like, I'm not, I'm doing, and I told her, I'm like, look, I'm doing this all respect. And I'm really looking out for you because I can easily tell you yes and you book me and I show up on the day and I do everything. And then you might not be happy with the way I did it. I'm okay with saying no. And it's like, and she's like, oh, thank you so much. We'll be in contact. And I'm like, lady, you're not going to be in contact because I'm trying to tell you to go this. And that's the thing. Like, I think a lot of people they're not okay with that. They feel like they want to book everything that they need. And I want to be clear. This is what I do. This is what I call my signature and my specialty. So I've started everything from what I post, what I say in my posts, because all my couples, they all get an album. They all, I want them to hang their, like you said, like it's artwork. It's a masterpiece because that's the passion I have. I want couples to instead of buying artwork or decor for your house, I want you to just get the pieces, get a canvas, get a metal, get something, a print, and put it on your wall. Let that be what decorates your house. Because at the end of the day, like we live in this digital age where everything is just digital. I know with me is like I take so many photos with my phone. How many times do I actually go through that? Right?
Yeah.
It's one
Yeah.
of those things where I'm like, look, I'm gonna offer you an album. I'm gonna include it. I don't even give my couples the option. I'm like, it's included.
Wow.
Album's included. You're gonna get it. You're gonna love it. And a lot of times they're like, "Oh my god, that's great," because some of these photographers are only offering digitals, and I'm like,
Most.
"Well, and the couples who want an album, that's my couple."
Yeah.
Because there is a value, there is something there. Of course, I do everything. If you look through one of my galleries, the dramatic signature is probably like not. It's like 5%
Yeah.
of the whole gallery. Like everything's kind of. I always tell my couples the way it's lit, like the light that's there is what is photographed, right? Yes, I
Yeah.
can add my light and stuff, and then I have my signature style. But then that signature style is because I put effort, I put time into that.
Yeah.
I love what I do. I put the extra touch into it.
Mm.
And that's where I'm looking for. And I think once you have a clear understanding of who your couple is, it's so much easier. Like that stress of like, or that issues that knock on wood, I haven't had issues with couples, like in terms of like style or anything like that, because they know what they're going to get. They know what they signed up for. I'm not hiding anything.
That's important. That's important.
Yeah.
You're transparent, you're upfront. And once again, at the beginning, I feel like for some creatives, could be a photographer, could be a DJ, it could apply to a lot, is sometimes you feel like you don't have the luxury, let's call it, of turning down clients when you're trying to build something. And to a certain extent, I also, for the people learning, feel like you do gotta kind of touch upon different areas just to kind of see what you like, what you don't like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes, it does get to the point where if you're not aligning with clients and you're not kind of having like your, let's call it your ideal client versus your non, you're going to be doing a disservice to them, but also kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier about the unhappy vendors, a disservice to yourself because you're going to be at an event that you don't want to be at because you already know that they're not aligned with what you're looking to do or what you're creative with or what you're good at. And so you're just already like, I'd rather be home right now. Not a good for both parties. I love the fact that you add the album thing. I think that's interestingly enough something that sounds so, I don't want to call it simple, but simple in the sense I'm not saying you don't put work and effort into it, but I can't tell you how many people I talk to who say, Christian, I got married 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I still haven't got to the album. And they might never get to it. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've heard those stories. I hear those all the time. I'm talking like my cousin who got married forever ago to like a couple that I met, I wasn't available for their wedding, but we stayed in touch on social media for whatever reason. And they were like, yeah, we got married like we still haven't got our album. And I'm like, what? Like, so this is something that is part of a service that makes it that much more premium. I feel like because you're taking something off their plate that they otherwise would not
Yeah.
do. But in dealing with so many different personalities at the same time, you're still dealing with people and personalities, even if they do like your style. What do you do with like these shy people or people are like, I love your style, I love your pictures, but like, oh, I don't know, I don't like the camera, I'm a
Yeah.
little shy. Like you got to still meet those
Yeah. Yeah.
people. I love
Yeah.
your work, but I'm still shy.
Yeah. So that's a great question because
Mm.
I get that all the time. Like,
Yeah.
get the hey Leo, we're awkward, or Leo, we don't like how we look in photos, or I hate taking pictures, or I don't like one side of my face, or something. And you start joking with them, and I tell them like, look, it's because I've never photographed you. That's why you haven't liked your photos, and it's kind of like the icebreaker. And so, started like about COVID time, I started offering an engagement session with every single wedding that I photograph. And it's different. Like I offer two different engagement sessions. I offer engagement for the couple that really wants it, and then those couples that don't want an engagement session, I still offer it, and I tell them, look, it's an icebreaker. We're gonna meet, short session, something local, right? Because I don't want to be driving 3 hours for something that they don't really want. So I'm like, look, it's local,
Yeah.
it's free, it's complimentary, but let's meet. Because like a lot of times, a lot of couples want to do Zoom, and like on the wedding day, you meet them in person for the first time, and it could be a little awkward. So during COVID, I was like, how can I make it work where like there's value, right? There's value on my end. And there's value on their end that then it'll benefit them on their wedding day. So I started offering like, these little mini engagement session, and couples, I said, look, there's no pressure. There's nothing. I'll give you a list of locations local to me. You pick what you want. I can recommend some. You tell me what day works for you and we'll make it happen. And couples love it because then it's like on the wedding day, oh, I know how I'm going to look, and, I trust him. He made me look great. because none of my couples are professional models. Of course, some couples are more comfortable than others in front of the camera, but I would say majority of my couples are not comfortable, right? They tell me, "Oh, I feel awkward," and I tell them, "Look, once if I have control of the situation, I'll pose because I don't want to take hundreds of bad looking photos of you awkwardly, and then you look at it and like Leo, I look awkward on my photos, right? I want to give you direction. If it looks awkward to me, I'm going to give you that adjustment, right? I'm not going to be photographing under your nose, right? Because nobody looks good, with a camera up their nose. I'm gonna make I'm gonna make you look the best you've like, and I tell them, I'm gonna make you look the best you ever looked in front of a camera.
Ooh,
I
I like
guarantee
that
that. And I'm
statement.
telling them, look, it might feel awkward when I pose you, but then I'll show you how you look. And then you tell me if it looks awkward. And like, oh yeah,
Gotcha.
you're right. And that's where you create, and that's where the relationship starts, right? The engagement. It's
Yeah.
like that trust, right? Because you go into something, you gotta trust somebody, right? And it's like, I don't know this photographer anywhere. And sometimes they'll know me from, like, say, I shot their cousin's wedding or I photographed a bridesmaid in a wedding that I photographed, and they had a great experience. And that's what I love because then like that, I know them a little bit because on the wedding day, I try to of course, the bride and groom are my main focus. Bridal party, I'm with them a long time. You try to create a relationship with everybody, even if it's a couple minutes, and in direction, and you treat everybody like I said. You're professional, treat everybody nice. You try to make them also people in the wedding party look the best they've ever looked in front of a camera.
Right.
And I think it goes a long way then when they see the pictures, like, "Oh my god, I look great," or you see them posting the photo that you took, and that's, I think where you get the fulfillingness of, what you do, where when they're sharing, they're happy, and you feel like you actually did something.
Yeah. No, I love that. And the fact that it also correlates or connects with what you said earlier about putting the time and effort. This is something that is putting extra time, different, an extra effort, but creating a different experience. And something that I try to sometimes put in words, even when I'm talking to couples and say, hey, look, I put a little extra time and attention or potentially extra meetings with you or whatever the case may be that I'm putting more time and effort to. And it's not to take time out of your busy schedule either, because people are like, oh, I'm busy, right? Everybody's busy, everybody has work, but it's going to make their wedding experience way better. The start to finish is just going to be totally different than otherwise not. But going to a creator, a vendor, a professional, I think the other thing, the something to take away from that too is, if you are trying to get to this next level, sometimes it takes a little bit more effort, a little bit more time,
Yeah,
and not versus just saying, oh, I'm just going to raise my prices tomorrow, but I'm not going to do nothing differently. I'm just going
yeah,
to wake up one day and it's going to be I mean, if you could do that, great. I love that. But now when people are comparing vendors and things, they're going to be like, well, what's the standout? What's the extra value? What's the thing? Maybe I want to splurge a little bit more, but like, I don't see the difference here.
yeah, yeah,
These two tires look the same, they're both going to give me 40,000 like what? Okay, I'm just going to get the cheaper one, versus like
yeah, yeah,
what is standing out, what's going to give you more value.
yeah.
A personal question, let's call it, is what's something that you've learned in this journey, because it hasn't been short. It's been a while now, from your college art years to picking up that first camera to having multiple jobs at once to where you are today, that is important to you, like more so with being just a human versus something connected to the camera. Let's put the camera aside for a second.
Yeah, I think just being able to, as a wedding photographer, right? Shooting a lot of weddings and even other moments in people's lives, you're able to see and appreciate the little moments. Like something I always tell, not always, but I've told people is like, I have a daughter and I have a son and I have a third on the way. And my daughter's is going to be 8, and I remember when she was born, when I'm photographing a bride and her dad, I feel like a connection. There's a connection there. Like the dad, I'm like, before it'd be like, oh yeah, dad. But now I'm like, shit, like
That's gonna be me one day.
sometimes I think about like my daughter, like you start thinking like, okay, focus, like
Yeah.
what it, you start valuing those little moments and something that once you have kids, you see things a little different, right? Like before kids, there was a kid, just give you a perspective, is when photographing a wedding before kids, like there's kids around, I'll photograph them. But I think like you become hyper aware of certain things when you become a dad, where you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I noticed this kid. I know what they're gonna do, right? I know what they're gonna do. I know what's happening here. I'm able to relate. And I think a lot of those moments, even for like grandparents, right? Knowing like, these people are not going to be here very long. I could tell you how many times I've photographed weddings where my couples don't even want, or they tell me they don't want photos with their grandparents. And that's mind boggling to me. Like
What?
I've had photo like I remember this, it was probably like 10 years ago or a little bit, probably 12 years ago. I was photographing a wedding, and I'm photographing the wedding. Usually I remember back then I would always ask like, what are important people in your lives? Let me know about grandparents, parents, names, all that. And this one couple didn't tell me anything about grandma. Nothing. All right. We did all the family photos throughout the day or whatever. The dance floor, this is after like all the formal dances. On the dance floor, I see this older lady dancing on the, she was probably like, I thought like maybe 80s, dancing. And this guy comes up to me, smiles, comes up to me, and he whispers in my ear. He's talking in my ear. He's like, "Hey, that's the groom's grandmother." I'm like, "The groom's grandmother? He didn't tell me anything." So
She's
I'm like,
here?
"Hold on." And the crazy thing, he's like, "She's 98 years old."
What?
And I'm like, okay. Cause I grew up different. I grew up with my grandma, right? My grandma basically kind of raised me, right? Like my mom raised me,
Same
but like,
here.
you're at grandma's house.
Yeah, yeah,
I couldn't understand how there's no relationship there. So I'm like, hold on. I'm like, I went to the groom. I'm like, hey, let's get a picture with your grandma because I didn't know,
yeah.
you didn't tell me about your grandma. So, and I was able to get that. And you know what? It's crazy how things go because, I'm friends with them on Facebook and stuff. And unfortunately, like I think a couple years later, grandma passes away. Guess which photo they use?
Of course. Of
You know?
course. The one that they would have never had. Yeah,
And that, so now I make it an effort, like, still to today, I guess sometimes couples that don't tell me those little those after me asking anything special,
of
any
course.
family members that, grandma, grandparents, and I understand maybe some family dynamics are a little different, that they don't have the same relationship, but I always make it an effort to kind of find if I see those things, because my connection with my grandma, I know that's very valuable, right?
Yeah.
So
Right,
I
right, right.
try to go and do that. So like things like that you're hyper aware of now, being in the game, being a father, taking things from your personal life and being like, okay, I see that differently. I know what's going to happen. And then you kind of almost like you run it through your head, like your daughter's first dance, and how that's going to be. It's like, oh my God,
Fun.
I don't even want to think about it. Like kind of snap out of it.
Yeah,
But it's life, right? And that's why these people hire me, is to capture those little moments.
yeah,
And I hope they appreciate it, because, and like I told you, I've been doing this weddings, I think, it's like 15 years, started like 16 years of photographing. And throughout the years, unfortunately, people pass, and those are the photos that, they use, the ones of smiling at the camera. And, those are the valuable photos. And, it's like once you start putting things in perspective, like, okay, like what I do, there's a matters a little bit. The photo that I took is valuable.
yeah. And I think that's, to my question, what's more than just the camera, but everything to being a human being is because there is a different type of connection there. It's not just a transactional business thing. Okay, well, they told me to take XYZ pictures, so I'm gonna do the thing, and then that's it. It's more than that. It's, thinking something that they wouldn't even think that they wanted or needed, but you thought about it for them. But this human side and this other side, personal side, is coming to you. And I think that's good. You're adding, a sense of emotion, stable emotion. I'm not saying to be, some people are emotional in a
Right.
erratic way, but a stable emotion that's going to help you be, like you said, hyper aware, focus, maybe deal with kids differently, because after having kids, they always don't listen, or versus before, you're probably like this young guy, like, come on, man, this freaking kid. You're like, get with it. So I think that's a beautiful thing that you're able to now merge the two sides and bring them together. So we're getting to the end of the interview, where it's more of the rapid fire, first thing that comes to mind, doesn't need to be a long answer type of questions. And then we'll wrap this thing up. So my first rapid fire question is, what is one detail guests always remember most about an event, you think?
Oof. The day or the party?
I mean, let's call it the entire day. I mean, that could fall into reception, it could be
Yeah, yeah,
ceremony,
yeah.
but
So
like the guests are going to
I'm
take away.
yeah, yeah. I'm a firm believer, like on a wedding party,
Yeah.
entertainment.
Okay.
You can't mess up on entertainment, music. The day, I would have to say photography, because that's the only thing that you have at the end of the night. The only thing you can show for it, you can show, anyone that wasn't there is going to be able to see it. I would say the food will be eaten, the flowers will die, the music will be played, but the only thing that's encapsulates everything is the photos and video. Yeah.
Feel like when I post a bunch of my videos after the event and people didn't get the videographer, they're like, Christian, can you send me all these videos? And I'm
Um, I think it's on its way out. Like the bouquet toss,
okay,
the garter toss.
got it.
I think it's already. It's like holding on for dear life.
Yeah, I agree. I call it the hybrid. Like we're gonna do some of the formalities, but usually even cake is becoming here and there. And but then
Yeah.
after that, a bouquet, garter, it's more and more out the window. What is something that you feel can kill the vibe at an event? Like instantly kind of kills the vibe.
Tension with bridal party.
Yeah, you
Family
probably see a
tension.
lot of that.
Yeah, family
Uh,
tension.
okay.
Family tensions. I got stories with tension. I've photographed the wedding where there was family fight. The reception finished like crazy stuff. So maybe
Yeah.
that's like a different.
Yeah, family dynamics is big. There's a whole psychology of weddings, but yeah, tension I could see really killing a vibe. I mean,
You
I've
you know
seen
you
that on
walk
my
in.
end too.
Yeah, you walk into a room and you see that there's okay, and then that's what I have to kind of come in and be like, hey, I understand what's going on here. How can I make this smooth and try to ease the tension a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Last question, and I know you've kind of touched upon it, but just to kind of round this thing out and close it up, what makes a client the right fit for you, your art, your energy?
Ooh, yeah, just someone that they're in love with what the work that I produce, and just giving me full control over everything. And luckily for me, I have a lot of my couples do that. Trust me that they trust me with everything. Some of you even tell me like, Leo, that's why we're hiring you because we want you. We love your work, and you let us know what we need to do.
Yeah,
And that's like,
that's perfect.
as a photographer, that's what you wanna hear. Like, "Leo, we love your work, we trust you, you tell us what we need to do."
Love that. Love that. And I mean, look, that's something that you might need to be aligned and kind of create this amazing experience. Where could people find you? Where are you most active? Let the listeners or viewers know.
Yeah, you could find me, I'm on Instagram since that's, like, the most popular, platform that people find me. It's, Leandro Da Silva photography underscore each instead of a space. I'm on there, leandrodasilva.com. Have a new website that should be launching any week now.
Okay. Okay. So you
Look
might
behind, it's like it's been like 8 years, so it needs a
some,
revamp, and, like you mentioned about you gotta be up on the latest trends. I do have a TikTok that I'm gonna be a lot more active on there, so
yes.
you'll hold me to it, so you'll see a lot more stuff on there.
Yeah.
So those are the main, and anytime, always drop me a DM.
Yeah.
I'm active, so I try to be very proactive on there.
Perfect. Slide through the DMs. Leo, thank you so much for making the time today. And for anybody watching or viewing, thank you so much for tuning in to The Right Fit. And of course, we hope to see you guys around the next time. Take care.
Thank
Peace.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Christian.